Mom didn't just scream at me that night. She pointed at the door like she was aiming a weapon and said, "Get out and don't ever come back." I walked away with a trash bag of clothes, thinking the silence behind me was freedom. But I didn't know the mortgage hadn't been paid for 8 months. I didn't know Logan had used my name for a loan I never touched, and I didn't know that later my phone would blow up, not from concern but from panic. But what they didn't know was, before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. Stories like this aren't just drama. They're reminders of truths most people never say out loud. Your support helps these stories reach someone who needs them. Are you ready? People always say a house remembers things. If that's true, then the house I grew up in remembered every silence, every favoritism, every time I swallowed something I should have screamed about. From the street, it looked perfect, fresh lawn beige siding, wind chimes tapping against the porch rail like a lullaby. Inside, everything tilted. Nothing felt steady. Especially not me. One of my earliest memories is at the dinner table. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and overcooked chicken. Logan sat beside me swinging his legs. Mom scooped mashed potatoes onto his plate, big scoops, fluffy ones, and ruffled his hair like he'd won a trophy. She didn't even glance at mine. "You'll get yours later," she said. But later never came. I told myself I wasn't hungry. It was easier than wondering why she forgot me. In 3rd grade, I won first place in a district-wide reading competition. The gym echoed with sneakers, folding chairs, and kids whispering. I wore a sparkly headband because I thought it made me look important. When they called my name, Mom clapped once, maybe twice. But 2 years earlier, when Logan won Most Improved in PE, she had screamed so loud the coach laughed. After my ceremony, she dragged Logan forward for pictures. "Stand next to your brother," she said. I stood there invisible, in my own moment. I didn't know it then, but that kind of erasure builds layer by layer. By 15, I was working my first job at a diner off Route 59. The smell of fryer oil clung to my skin. My feet throbbed after every shift. I'd come home near midnight, hair damp with sweat. Logan would be sprawled on the couch, headset on, yelling at teammates. "Did you finish the chores?" Mom asked him. He shrugged. "I'm tired." She turned to me. "Violet, just do it. He needs rest." My legs felt like sandbags, but I still said okay. That one word would haunt me years later. Christmas should have been magic. Snow against the windows, lights blinking along the gutters. Daniel handed Logan a brand new console wrapped with a silver bow. Logan yelled so loud the neighbors probably heard. My gift came next, a floral notebook from the dollar aisle. "Thought you'd like it?" Mom said, eyes already on Logan's excitement. The notebook smelled like cheap glue. I smiled anyway. But something inside me folded inward. When Logan turned 22, he started a tech venture in our damp basement. Energy drinks everywhere, wires tangling like vines. After it collapsed spectacularly, Daniel pulled me aside one stormy afternoon. "Your brother needs help," he said. The help turned into $80,000 of debt. I was 22 too, barely surviving college, juggling 2 jobs, and somehow I was the one at the bank signing papers with trembling hands. Mrs. Reed looked at me with soft pity. "Your parents say you're the responsible one." Responsible. A word that would become a prison. College blurred after the classes, double shifts, wire transfers. Every month I'd send money home for emergencies. Later I learned those emergencies were Logan's vacations, bar tabs, sneakers he bragged about online. Family helps family, Mom always said. But helping felt a lot like drowning. By the time I graduated and moved to Chicago for my first finance job, Sundays had become rituals of obligation. I'd walk into that same dim living room TV murmuring, "Logan sprawled out." Mom sighing dramatically, and feel myself shrink the way I used to at 8 years old. I didn't know it then, but each of those moments wasn't random. They were warnings, and I ignored every one of them. By the time I turned 26, walking back into that house felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew their lines except me. Every Sunday I arrived with groceries, the plastic bags cutting into my fingers. Mom never looked up from her phone. Her perfume, sharp and floral, hit me before her voice did. "You're late," she said. Even when I was early, somehow I was still late. Logan wandered in, drank straight from the orange juice carton, then disappeared again. No one corrected him. No one ever corrected him. Thanksgiving that year carved something deep. Relatives crowded the living room. The TV shouted over everyone. Mom bragged loudly about Logan working on something big. When an aunt asked about my promotion, Mom dismissed it with a flick of her wrist. She's fine anyway, Logan. I stood holding a dish of mashed potatoes, the warmth burning into my palms. Everyone turned toward him. No one looked at me. I swallowed the hurt. It scraped going down. A week later, Mom called me at work, her voice frantic through the static. There's a problem with the mortgage. My stomach dropped. I paid last month. Well, something happened. Logan needed. Of course, Logan always needed. That night, rain slapped my windshield the whole drive to Naperville. Inside, the air felt thick enough to chew. Logan sat hunched on the couch. Daniel looked exhausted. Mom paced like she was rehearsing anger. "We're behind," Daniel finally said. "How behind?" Silence stretched, then Mom whispered, 5 months. My breath caught. "How I've been paying." Mom's eyes flicked to Logan. He mumbled, "I had to take care of something." "What something?" He stared at the floor. I didn't know it then, but this moment was the first fissure, the crack that would widen until everything caved in. Another hit came days later when I checked the shared emergency account, charges to a spa, a boutique, a fancy steakhouse. When I confronted Mom, she didn't flinch. "I deserve nice things," she said, "after everything I've done." "For this family," I murmured. "Not for yourself," she scoffed. "You make enough, and you don't even have a family of your own." That sentence hit harder than any overdue bill. Then came the loan, the one I never applied for, but was somehow tied to my name, co-signed by Mom. When I confronted them, Mom crossed her arms. "He's your brother." "Of course I did it." Daniel muttered, "Don't make this bigger than it is." Logan said nothing, but I felt it. Then clear and cold, they weren't asking for help. They were claiming ownership. I left the house that night knowing something had shifted in me. Because every lie, every dismissal, every "you're overreacting" had finally aligned into one unignorable truth. They didn't love me. They depended on me. And dependence masquerading as love is the most dangerous kind. The weeks before everything collapsed didn't feel explosive. They felt slow, like someone tightening a rope around my ribs, one knot at a time, waiting for me to notice I couldn't breathe. It started with something almost laughably small. One Saturday morning, I stopped by the house unannounced. The sky outside was low and gray clouds hanging like a warning. Inside, the living room looked like a landfill, takeout boxes on the table, soda cans on the floor, blankets twisted everywhere. Logan was snoring on the recliners, the TV flickering over his face. Mom looked up from the dining table with a frown sharp enough to cut tile. "You could have called." "I brought groceries," I said, lifting the bags. She waved a hand. "Always so pushy. Just put them in the kitchen." Pushy. It echoed in my head long after I walked to the kitchen. Just existing around them was suddenly too much. Mom followed me in slippers, dragging voice flat. "Your brother's been stressed lately. Maybe don't come around so much. You make him feel pressured." Pressured by what I asked. She snapped, "Your life, your job, your success." I hadn't said a word to him. Apparently breathing was now an offense. A few days later, Daniel called. His voice trembled beneath a layer of forced calm. The electric bill increased. "I sent money for that," I said. "Well, your mother used it for something else." "What? Something else?" He hesitated. She handled it. Handled. That word disguised more damage than any curse. The next crack split wider when I checked the shared emergency account. Hundreds spent at a spa. Another chunk at a boutique. A steakhouse bill. When I confronted Mom, she didn't even blink. "I deserve a break," she said. "After everything I've done for this family, for the family," I replied, "not yourself." She scoffed. "You make enough. You don't have a family of your own. What else do you spend it on?" That sentence wasn't a knife, it was a hammer. But the worst hit came from Logan. A debt collector called one afternoon asking about a loan tied to my name. "I never applied for a loan," I said. The woman replied, "It lists your old address," and a cosigner, Karen Hayes. My blood ran cold. That night I drove to the house, rain pounding like fists against the windshield. Logan sat at the table eating cereal at 10 p.m., refusing to look at me. "You used my name," I said. He shrugged. "It was for something important." What was important, don't worry about it. Mom stepped between us. He's your brother. Stop attacking him. He used my identity, I said. Daniel sighed. Let's not make this a big thing. It is a big thing. Mom's voice sharpened. Don't talk to your father like that, Father. He wasn't even defending me. He wasn't defending anything. My throat tightened. My vision blurred from the pressure in my chest. Mom's final words before I stormed out sealed something inside me. You don't need to agree. We know what's best for this family. Family. The word felt rotten. But the rope tightened even more the next week. I caught another charge, $612 on the emergency account, another spa visit, then a $480 boutique, then $230 at a fancy restaurant. When I confronted her again, she said, You're ungrateful. We raised you. We gave you everything, everything. I almost laughed. But nothing was funny anymore. Another night, Daniel called, voice thin and trembling. The bank wants to speak with you. Why me? You're the one they trust. Not respect, not value. Trust because I paid. As I hung up, something inside me shifted cold and certain. I didn't know it yet, but each of these little implosions was lining up in the dark, waiting to detonate all at once, and soon they would. 2 weeks before everything finally snapped, I stopped by the house after work. I don't know why, habit, obligation, guilt. The sun was sinking low, staining the quiet Naperville street orange. But when I stepped inside, the house felt wrong. Stale, still, dim like it was holding its breath. Mom was in the kitchen surrounded by a fortress of unopened envelopes. Past due notices, credit card warnings, a letter from the bank, things she'd hidden from me until they grew teeth. You should have called, she said without looking up. You should have told me I answered. Told you what I tapped the stack. She snatched it away. It's nothing. We're fine. But her voice cracked thin and splintered. Daniel came in rubbing his forehead, the way he always did when he was preparing to disappoint me. Karen, he whispered, we have to tell her. Tell me what he exhaled. We're further behind than you think. How far silence? Then 7 months. The room tilted for a second, not from shock, but from recognition. 7 months of me paying, 7 months of them lying. Mom jumped in, desperate to rewrite the narrative. Your brother had expenses. He's trying to get his life together. From the living room, Logan called out, I didn't ask for your help. I stared at the doorway. You didn't have to, I said. You just took it. He rolled his eyes. You're being dramatic. That word again. Always used to silence me, but the deeper cut came days later. I checked the emergency account again. This time the charges weren't even subtle. A spa appointment, a boutique purchase, an overpriced dinner. When I confronted Mom, she met me with cold entitlement. You wouldn't understand, she snapped. I needed a break. And Logan needed clothes for interviews. Interviews. He hasn't left the house. You're always judging him, she said. No, I replied. I'm paying for him. She slammed the drawer so hard the silverware rattled. You're ungrateful. We raised you. Ungrateful. For being drained. Then came the call from Mrs. Reed at the bank. Her office smelled like dust and mold. Papers were stacked everywhere like tiny gravestones to bad decisions. Miss Hayes, she said, tapping the mortgage printouts, these payments aren't enough. In fact, many deposits went to personal spending, not the loan. My stomach tightened. It wasn't new, but hearing it out loud felt like someone pressing a fist into my ribs. Driving home, the rain traced frantic lines across the windshield. I saw myself in the glass, older, worn, tired in ways I couldn't articulate. When I finally walked into my apartment, my phone lit up with a group call. Mom, Daniel, Logan. They didn't even try to hide the urgency. I let it ring. The next day, Logan texted, You're ruining everything. Then if the house goes under, it'll be your fault. For once, the words didn't sting. They landed on something already dead. Then Daniel messaged, Why haven't you paid the mortgage this month? Not how are you not? We're sorry. Just a demand. That was the moment clarity slid in, quiet and sharp. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a provider, an account number, a wallet in human shape. The rope around my ribs didn't tighten anymore, it snapped. And I didn't know it then, but this was the final breath before the explosion. The night the calls wouldn't stop. The night their panic would strip every secret bare. The night everything they'd built on my back would come crashing down. The night everything finally blew open was colder than it should have been. The kind of cold that seeps through your sleeves and makes the whole world feel sharper. I was sitting alone in my apartment city, lights flickering through the blinds when my phone buzzed once, then again, then 5 times in a row. Daniel, Mom, Logan, unknown numbers. Even the old landline from the house, a number they hadn't used in years. I let it buzz, the sound vibrating against the table like a warning siren. The overhead light flickered. The heater groaned. My chest tightened with something that wasn't fear anymore, just exhaustion. And then silence. For 5 seconds. 5 long, suffocating seconds. Then the phone lit up again, rattling violently. I picked it up without thinking. Daniel's voice exploded through the speaker. Violet, finally. Why the hell haven't you been answering? This is serious. I leaned against the counter, the cold quartz grounding me. No, I said. But I'm sure you're about to tell me. He inhaled shaky. The bank called. We're behind again. They're threatening action. You should have paid the mortgage this month. There it was. The line that snapped something clean inside me. I should have paid, I repeated. Yes, he barked. You know we can't cover it. Logan is still finding his purpose, I cut in. Still unemployed, still buying shoes with my money. Silence thickened like fog. Then Mom screeched through the phone, sharp enough to make me pull it from my ear. You will not talk about your brother like that. He's trying. We were upset when we kicked you out. Families say things they don't mean. You told me never to come back, I said, and you meant it. You're being dramatic, she snapped. The irony almost made me laugh. Another call beeped in. Logan. I need to take this, I said. Mom screamed, don't you? I hung up. When I answered Logan's call, he didn't even breathe before yelling. What's your problem, Violet? Mom's crying. Dad's freaking out. Why would you say that to them? Which part? I asked. The part where I reminded them they kicked me out, or the part where I stopped paying your bills? You know they can't afford the house without you? And why is that my problem? Because you're the responsible one. There it was. The truth they'd been circling for years, and you're what I asked, the helpless one. The genius who never works, the man who uses my name for loans. He went silent. You lied to me, I said, all of you. He exhaled shakily. You didn't have to call the bank, but I did. And guess what? You haven't paid the mortgage in 8 months, nothing, just his panicked breathing. I hung up. Then I called my parents back and put the phone on speaker. I stood in the center of my apartment like it was a courtroom. Mom picked up instantly. Violet, please no, I said. You're going to listen. Daniel tried to interrupt. Don't talk to your mother like I paid the bills, I said. The groceries, the mortgage. I carried the whole house while Logan did nothing, and you let him. Shy Senator's silence swallowed the room. You didn't call because you missed me, I continued. You called because the bank finally reached you, not me. Mom's voice cracked. If you don't help us, we could lose the house. That's between you and the bank. You're abandoning us. Daniel snapped. No, I said softly. You abandoned me years ago. And then I delivered the final line, cold, clear, irreversible. I won't pay another dollar. Handle your own mess. I hung up before they could breathe another word. And for the first time in years, the silence felt like mine. For days after I hung up, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Not with anger anymore, something worse, desperation. Mom called at odd hours. Daniel sent clipped, guilt-laced messages. Logan wrote long paragraphs that alternated between blaming me and begging me. I didn't answer any of them. Silence became peaceful, almost luxurious. At night, I sat near my window watching Chicago's lights scatter across the glass like small galaxies. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel tight. My shoulders didn't feel weighted down. My thoughts didn't feel policed by guilt. No Sunday drives, no forced smiles, no financial ambushes disguised as family emergencies, just quiet. That quiet was so unfamiliar it almost felt dangerous. One evening, while sorting through old documents I'd shoved into a drawer months before I found a thin gray folder I didn't remember tucking away. The tab read Hayes Case File. I opened it. Inside were pieces of a story I hadn't realized I'd been collecting. Mortgage statements showing months of missed payments and screenshots of transfers I'd made, bank emails. The inquiry for the loan tied to my name. Receipts for mom's spa membership and boutique purchases. A printout of Logan's failed startup debt, a paper trail. Every lie in black ink. And suddenly a thought settled in quiet, sharp, steady. They weren't just careless, they were reckless, and I had proof. A few days later, the bank called again. The woman's tone was careful, too careful. Miss Hayes, we're notifying you that the property is now officially under pre-foreclosure review. I didn't flinch. I understand, I said, but I'm not the homeowner. She hesitated. We just thought you should be aware. When I hung up, another message from Mom appeared on my screen, pages of apologies, tangled with accusations, her specialty. Daniel sent a shorter one. We're trying to fix it. We didn't mean for it to get like this. I didn't respond. Instead, I placed the gray folder back in my drawer. Not to use, not yet. But someday, maybe. Because they thought losing me meant losing money. They thought freezing me out meant I'd crawl back. They thought cutting me off meant cutting my strength. But what they didn't know was they'd handed me the one thing they could never take back: leverage. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, make sure you hit subscribe. Stories like mine aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that sometimes the people who should have protected you are the ones who drained you the most. Share your own story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if you want to know what happens next, because trust me, things are far from over, stick around. This chapter closed, but the fallout hasn't even begun.